3 days after burying her father, Elara Vance is sold like property to pay his debts. The groom? Lucien Moreau, a crime lord whose name makes grown men flinch. She doesn't know his face, doesn't know his voice, only that he owns her now, bought and paid for before she could even grieve. The wedding isn't a celebration, it's a sentencing. And when their eyes meet across that cold, merciless altar, one thing becomes terrifyingly clear. This man didn't just buy a wife to settle accounts. He wanted her, specifically, deliberately, and he's been watching her far longer than she knows. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels. The dress didn't fit. Elara stood in the cramped back room of the church, staring at her reflection in a mirror that had seen better decades. The gown was beautiful. She'd give it that much. Ivory silk that probably cost more than her father's entire medical bills combined, which was saying something considering those bills were exactly why she was here. The bodice was too tight, the sleeves too long. Someone else's dress, hastily altered by someone who'd measured her with their eyes instead of a tape. Someone else's life, thrust onto her shoulders. She touched the fabric at her waist, felt the stiff boning beneath. 3 days ago, she'd worn black to her father's funeral. Today, she wore white to her own. You need to fix your face. Elara's gaze shifted to the woman standing behind her. Margaret, her father's attorney, though that title felt generous given how spectacularly the woman had failed at her one job, protecting her client's daughter from his catastrophic decisions. My face is fine, Elara said. You look like you're about to throw up. I might be. Margaret sighed, the sound heavy with something that might have been sympathy if Elara was feeling charitable. She wasn't. I know this isn't what you wanted. What I wanted. Elara turned and the dress swished around her legs like a living thing trying to trap her. I wanted my father to not gamble away everything we had. I wanted him to not borrow money from people who break kneecaps for late payments. I wanted him to not die and leave me holding a debt I can't possibly pay. But sure, let's talk about what I wanted. Margaret's mouth thinned. She was a severe woman, all sharp angles and sharper suits, but right now she just looked tired. Your father made mistakes. Mistakes? Elara laughed, and it came out wrong, edged with something that might turn into screaming if she let it. Is that what we're calling it? Mistakes? But this arrangement will clear everything, every penny. You'll be free of it. Except I won't be free at all, will I? Margaret didn't answer that. Couldn't, probably. They both knew what this was. A transaction. A business deal dressed up in silk and promises that meant nothing. Elara turned back to the mirror. The woman looking back at her was a stranger, pale, hollow-eyed. Her dark hair had been swept up into something elegant that made her neck look too long, too exposed, vulnerable. She'd never worn her hair like this. Her father used to say she looked like her mother when she smiled. She wasn't smiling now. Who is he? Elara asked. You never actually told me his name. She'd asked before. Multiple times. Margaret had deflected every time, citing confidentiality, saying it didn't matter, that the terms were generous and Elara should be grateful someone was willing to take on her father's mess. Margaret hesitated now, and that hesitation told Elara more than words could. His name is Lucien Moreau. The name meant nothing to Elara. Should it? She watched Margaret's face in the mirror, saw the way the woman's jaw tightened. Who is he? Elara asked again, slower. He's well-connected. That's not an answer. He's a businessman. Margaret. The attorney exhaled. He's someone you don't say no to. That's who he is. Someone who, when he wants something, he gets it. And he wanted this arrangement. Wanted this arrangement. Not wanted to help. Not wanted to be charitable. Wanted this. Why? Elara's voice came out smaller than she intended. Why would someone like that want to marry someone like me? I don't ask those questions, Margaret said. And neither should you. A knock at the door made them both jump. A man's voice, muffled through the wood. 5 minutes. 5 minutes until she walked down an aisle toward a man whose name she'd learned 30 seconds ago. 5 minutes until she promised herself to a stranger because her father had been too weak, too desperate, too broken to stop himself from destroying everything. She wanted to hate him for it. Her father. Wanted to let that anger burn hot and bright enough to carry her through this. But all she felt was tired. Bone deep, soul-sick tired. I don't have a choice, do I? Elara asked. Margaret's silence was answer enough. The church was smaller than Alara expected. No grand cathedral with soaring ceilings and stained glass casting colored light across marble floors. This was something else. A private chapel, barely large enough for the 20 or so people scattered across the pews. She didn't recognize any of them. Not one. No friends, no family, just strangers in expensive suits and dresses that probably cost more than she'd earned in a year at the bookstore where she'd worked. Used to work. She'd quit yesterday. Or been fired. Hard to say which. When you called your boss and said you couldn't come in because you were getting married on Thursday to pay off your dead father's gambling debts. The organ music started, something classical she didn't recognize. Probably beautiful if she was in any state to appreciate it. Margaret walked her down the aisle. Not her father, he was 3 days in the ground. Not a brother or uncle or friend. Just the lawyer who'd facilitated this whole mess, her hand tight on Alara's elbow, like she thought Alara might bolt. She wouldn't, couldn't. The doors were probably locked anyway. The man at the altar had his back to her. Alara's first thought was that he was tall, taller than she'd expected, though she hadn't really expected anything. Broad-shouldered in a black suit that fit like it had been made for him, which it probably had. Dark hair, cut short. He didn't turn as she approached, and something about that felt deliberate, a power play, making her come to him. She stopped at the altar, waited. He turned. Alara's breath caught. She didn't know what she'd been expecting. Someone older, maybe, softer. The kind of man who needed to buy a wife because he couldn't get one any other way. But Lucien Moreau was none of those things. He was probably in his early 30s, with the kind of face that made you look twice, sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, a mouth that looked like it didn't smile often. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Gray, cold, the color of storm clouds, and just as dangerous. He was looking at her like he was cataloging her, taking inventory. His gaze moved from her face to her shoulders to the dress to her hands, which she realized were shaking. She curled her fingers into fists. "Alara Vance," he said. His voice was low, controlled, with an edge that suggested he didn't waste words. "That's me." She hated how small her voice sounded, hated that he'd said her name like he knew her when she'd only just learned his. Something flickered in his expression. Amusement, maybe. Or satisfaction. It was gone before she could identify it. The officiant cleared his throat. An old man in robes that had seen better days, clearly uncomfortable with whatever this was. He opened his book and started talking, the words washing over Alara without meaning. "Do you take this man? Do you take this woman? In sickness and in health? Till death do you part?" She wanted to laugh at that one. Death had already done its part. It had taken her mother when Alara was 12. Taken her father 3 days ago. Death was practically a member of the family at this point. "I do," Lucien said when prompted. His eyes never left her face. The officiant turned to Alara. "And do you, Alara Vance, take this man?" "She does," Lucien interrupted. The officiant blinked. "I need to hear it from—" "She does," Lucien repeated, and this time it wasn't a statement. It was a command. Alara's spine straightened. "I can speak for myself." Lucien's eyebrow lifted slightly. "Then speak." The challenge hung between them. Everyone in the chapel was watching, waiting. She could say no, could refuse, could make him drag her through this kicking and screaming. But then what? The debt wouldn't disappear. The men her father owed wouldn't suddenly develop consciences. She'd still be trapped, just in a different kind of cage. At least this one came with a husband who looked like he could protect her from the wolves, even if he might be the biggest wolf of all. "I do," Alara said. Lucien's mouth curved. Not quite a smile. Something darker. "Good girl." The words sent ice down her spine. The officiant rushed through the rest, clearly wanting this over with. The rings were produced. Alara didn't see where from. Hers was simple, a thin band of platinum that felt heavy on her finger. His matched. He slid hers on with steady hands while hers shook so badly she nearly dropped his. "You may kiss the bride." Lucien stepped closer. Alara's heart hammered. He was tall enough that she had to tilt her head back to look at him, and this close she could see details she'd missed before. A small scar above his left eyebrow. The precise way his hair was cut. The fact that he smelled like something expensive and dark, cedar maybe, with something sharper underneath. His hand came up to cup her jaw. His fingers were warm, steady. He tilted her face up further, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. Breathe, he said, so quietly only she could hear. Then he kissed her. It wasn't what she expected, not rough or demanding, almost gentle, really. A brush of lips that lasted maybe 3 seconds before he pulled back. But in those 3 seconds, she learned something important about Lucien Moreau. He was a man who controlled everything. Even his gentleness was calculated. Applause scattered through the chapel, polite, obligatory. Lucien took her hand and turned them to face the small crowd, and Alara got her first good look at the people who'd witnessed this farce. Men, mostly. All of them watching Lucien with expressions ranging from respect to fear. A few women scattered throughout, beautiful and bored-looking in their designer clothes. In the back row, a massive man with a scarred face and arms like tree trunks stood with his arms crossed, watching her with undisguised curiosity. These weren't wedding guests. They were witnesses. Making sure she couldn't back out, couldn't claim later that this hadn't happened. This wasn't a wedding, it was a business meeting, and she was the acquisition. Lucien led her down the aisle, his hand firm on hers. Not painful, but inescapable. The crowd filed out after them, and suddenly Alara was standing in the weak afternoon sunlight, the cold April air biting through her dress. A car waited at the curb. Black. Expensive. The kind with windows you couldn't see through. "Where are we going?" Alara asked. "Home," Lucien said. "I need to go back to my apartment, get my things." "Already handled. Your belongings are being moved as we speak." She stopped walking. "You went through my apartment?" "I had people go through your apartment," he corrected. "There's a difference." "You had no right." "I had every right." He turned to face her fully, and the warmth from the kiss, if it could even be called warmth, was gone completely. This was the man Margaret had warned her about, the one you didn't say no to. "You're my wife now, Alara. That means what's yours is mine. Your apartment, your things, your debts, all of it. I'm not a possession. Aren't you?" He tilted his head slightly. "You were offered in payment for a debt, accepted as settlement. The paperwork's been filed, legally. You're mine." The word should have made her angry, should have made her want to slap him, scream at him, do something other than just stand there feeling the ground shift beneath her feet. "I'm a person," she said, "not property. I'm aware." Something flickered in his eyes again, that same unreadable expression from before. "If you were property, this would be significantly simpler." He opened the car door. "Get in." "And if I don't?" "Then I'll put you in. Your choice, how dignified you want this to be." Alara looked past him at the chapel, at the strangers filing into their own expensive cars, at Margaret standing by the entrance looking like she wanted to be anywhere else. No help there. No help anywhere. She got in the car. Lucien slid in beside her, and the door closed with a heavy thunk that sounded far too final. The driver pulled away from the curb without being told, like he'd been waiting for exactly this moment. The interior smelled like leather and that same dark scent Lucien wore. The seats were soft. The windows were, as she'd suspected, tinted so dark she could barely see out. A partition separated them from the driver, closed for privacy. Privacy. Right, because now they were married, they needed privacy. Alara pressed herself against her door, putting as much space between them as possible. Lucien noticed. Of course he noticed. He seemed like the kind of man who noticed everything. "Scared?" he asked. "Should I be?" "Probably." At least he was honest. They drove in silence. Alara watched the city slide past through the tinted windows, landmarks she recognized fading into neighborhoods she didn't. The buildings got nicer. The cars got more expensive. Trees appeared, actual trees, which you didn't see much of in the parts of the city where she'd grown up. Old money territory. The kind of place where people had gates and security and probably didn't know their neighbors because their properties were measured in acres, not feet. The car turned onto a private road. Trees lined both sides, their branches creating a canopy overhead. Then gates. Actual iron gates that opened automatically as they approached. Beyond them, a house. Except calling it a house was like calling the ocean a puddle. It was an estate. 3 stories of stone and windows, with wings extending on either side of the main building. Perfectly manicured lawns. Gardens that probably required a full-time staff. The kind of place you saw in magazines and thought nobody actually lived in. "This is where you live?" Alara asked. "Where we live," Lucien corrected. "Now." The car stopped in front of the main entrance. The driver, a thin man with silver hair who hadn't said a word the entire trip, came around to open her door. Alara got out on legs that felt unsteady. The front door opened before they reached it. A woman stood there, maybe 50, in a neat black dress with her gray hair pulled back in a bun. She had kind eyes. That was Alara's first thought. Kind eyes and a face that had seen enough of life to know when to ask questions and when to keep quiet. "Mrs. Chen," Lucian said. "This is my wife, Alara." The words sounded wrong in his mouth. My wife. Like he was testing them out. Mrs. Chen's expression didn't change. "Ma'am, welcome." "Thank you," Alara managed. The interior of the house matched the exterior, expensive, beautiful, and completely impersonal. Marble floors, high ceilings, art that was probably worth more than Alara's entire life to date. Everything was in shades of gray and white and black, cold colors that made the space feel more like a museum than a home. "Mrs. Chen runs the household," Lucian said. "If you need anything, ask her. Your room is upstairs." "My room?" Alara repeated. "Not our room." Something shifted in his expression. "Did you want to share a room?" No, I just thought, but I don't make assumptions," he said. "You'll have your own space, your own bathroom, privacy when you want it." Thank you." He studied her for a moment, and she had the uncomfortable feeling he could see right through her, through the polite words and the forced calm to the terror underneath. "Mrs. Chen will show you upstairs," he said. "I have business to attend to. We'll have dinner at 7. Don't be late." He walked away before she could respond, his footsteps echoing on the marble floor until he disappeared down a hallway. Mrs. Chen touched her elbow gently. "This way, dear." The stairs curved up to the second floor. Portraits lined the walls, old ones, people in old-fashioned clothes who stared down with serious expressions. Probably Moreau ancestors. Alara wondered if any of them had been sold to pay debts too. "Here we are," Mrs. Chen said, opening a door near the end of the hall. The room beyond was bigger than Alara's entire apartment had been. A massive 4-poster bed dominated the space, dressed in white linens that looked soft enough to drown in. Windows overlooked the grounds, a sitting area with a couch and chairs, another door that presumably led to the bathroom Lucian had mentioned. "Your things arrived about an hour ago," Mrs. Chen said. "I had them placed in the closet, but if you'd like them arranged differently—" "This is fine," Alara interrupted. "Thank you." Mrs. Chen hesitated. "I know this must be overwhelming." "That's one word for it." "Mr. Moreau isn't a bad man." Alara looked at her. "You don't have to say that." "I wouldn't if it wasn't true." The older woman's voice was firm. "He's hard. I won't lie about that. But he's not cruel. He has his rules, and he expects them followed, but he's fair. More fair than most men in his position would be." "What position is that exactly?" Mrs. Chen's expression went carefully neutral. "That's not for me to say. But you'll learn. Everyone does, eventually." She moved toward the door. "Dinner's at 7, like he said. The dining room is on the first floor, east wing. I'll have someone come get you if you'd like." "I can find it." "Of course." Mrs. Chen paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I'm glad he's married. I think it might be good for him. Having someone." She left before Alara could ask what that meant. Alone, Alara sank onto the bed. The mattress was exactly as soft as it looked. The kind of soft that money bought. The kind of soft that came with a price. She looked down at her hand. The ring caught the light from the window, platinum gleaming. Already it felt like part of her, which was terrifying. How quickly you could get used to chains if they were pretty enough. Her phone buzzed in her clutch, the one accessory she'd been allowed to keep. She pulled it out. A text from Margaret. "Paperwork is filed. Debt is cleared. You're free." Free. Right. Alara set the phone aside and stood, moving to the closet. Mrs. Chen hadn't exaggerated. All her belongings were there. Her clothes, her books, her small collection of things that had belonged to her mother. Everything packed neatly, organized by someone who'd been paid to care. She found jeans and a sweater and changed out of the wedding dress, hanging it in the back of the closet where she wouldn't have to look at it. The jeans were old, worn soft from washing. The sweater had a hole in the sleeve. Normal clothes for her normal life that didn't exist anymore. 6:30. Half an hour until dinner with her husband. Her husband. The crime lord. The man who'd bought her to settle a debt. The man who'd been watching her before the debt. Who'd wanted her specifically. That was the part that scared her most. Not the forced marriage, or the isolation, or the enormous house that felt like a very expensive prison. It was knowing that this hadn't been random, that Lucien Moreau had chosen her deliberately. She just didn't know why. The dining room was exactly where Mrs. Chen said it would be. Alara found it at 6:58, which she counted as a victory given the size of the house. The room was formal, long table, candles already lit, place settings for two at one end. Lucien was already there, standing by the window with a glass of something amber in his hand. He'd changed too, traded the wedding suit for dark slacks and a gray shirt with the sleeves rolled up. It should have made him look more casual. Somehow it just made him look more dangerous. He turned when she entered. His gaze traveled over her jeans and sweater, and she braced for a comment about appropriate dinner attire. "Better," he said instead. "Better?" "Than the dress. You looked like you wanted to crawl out of your skin." "I did." "At least you're honest." He moved to the table, pulling out a chair. "Sit." It wasn't a request. Alara sat. He took the seat at the head of the table, close enough to reach her, but far enough to maintain that careful distance he seemed to prefer. Mrs. Chen appeared with two plates. Steak. Vegetables that probably had names Alara didn't know. Everything arranged artfully, like they were in a restaurant instead of his house. Their house, she corrected herself. Except it didn't feel like hers, probably never would. "You're allowed to eat," Lucien said. Alara picked up her fork. The steak was perfectly cooked. The vegetables were probably delicious. Everything tasted like sawdust. "You have questions," Lucien said. "Not a question, a statement. Hundreds." "Ask." "Where to even start?" "Why me?" "Because you were offered." "That's not an answer. Margaret said you wanted this arrangement. Wanted me. Why?" Lucien cut into his steak with precise movements. "Your father owed money to some very dangerous people. People who would have made you pay his debts in ways significantly less pleasant than marriage. So this was charity?" "No." He met her eyes. "This was opportunity." "Opportunity to what? Acquire a wife you don't want?" "What makes you think I don't want you?" The question hung between them. Alara set down her fork. "Because nobody in their right mind marries a stranger to pay off someone else's debt unless they're getting something out of it. So what are you getting, Lucien? A cook? A maid? Someone to look good at business dinners?" "I have staff for the first two, and I don't attend business dinners." "Then what?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different. Softer, maybe. Or just less controlled. "Do you remember last summer? The bookstore on 6th Street? You were working the register." Alara's breath caught. "That's the store where I worked. How did you—" A man came in, early 50s, drunk, aggressive. He was harassing the other employee. Young girl couldn't have been more than 17. She remembered. Michael. He'd been a regular problem, coming in smelling like cheap vodka, making everyone uncomfortable. That day, he'd cornered Sarah, the high school student who worked weekends. "You stepped between them," Lucien continued. "Told him to leave. He grabbed your arm. You didn't flinch. Didn't back down. Just stood there until he let go and walked out." "How do you know about that?" "Because I was there." He took a drink. "I came in looking for a book, saw the whole thing, watched you protect that girl even though he was twice your size and you were clearly terrified." "I wasn't terrified," Alara lied. "You were. Your hands were shaking, but you didn't move." She didn't know what to say, couldn't reconcile the man sitting across from her with someone who'd been in that bookstore, watching her. "That was 9 months ago." "I know. You've been—" "What? Watching me since then?" "Learning about you," he corrected. "There's a difference." "That's creepy? Unsettling?" "Probably." He leaned back in his chair. "But I wanted to know who you were. What kind of person stands up to a drunk twice her size for a girl she barely knows? What kind of person works 2 jobs to help pay her father's medical bills, even though he's the reason you're in debt in the first place? How do you know all this?" "I make it my business to know things." Alara stood, her chair scraped against the floor. "This is insane. You don't get to stalk someone for months and then force them into marriage and act like it's romantic." "I never said it was romantic." "Then what is it?" Lucien stood too. He was taller than her by nearly a foot, and Alara had to fight the urge to step back. "It's practical. You needed protection from your father's debts. I needed—" He stopped. Needed what? He looked at her for a long moment. Someone real. The words hit her like a physical thing. Someone real. Like everyone else in his life was fake. Like he'd been surrounded by people who wanted something from him and saw her, a nobody from nowhere, protecting a girl for no reason other than it was the right thing to do. And decided he wanted that. Wanted her. You don't even know me, Alara said. I know enough. You know what you've observed. That's not the same thing. No, he agreed. Which is why you're here, so I can learn the rest. And what if you don't like what you learn? Then I'll deal with it. Just like that. Just like that. Alara sank back into her chair. Her legs felt weak. This is insane. Probably. Lucien sat too, picked up his fork like they were having a normal conversation about normal things. But it's done now. You're my wife. I'm your husband. We can make this work or we can make it miserable. Your choice. My choice, she repeated, like I had a choice in any of this. You didn't, he said simply. But you do now. Every day going forward. You can hate me. You can fight me. You can make this the worst decision I've ever made, or what? Or you can try. Try what? To like you? To survive this. Together. He set down his fork. I won't lie to you, Alara. My life is complicated, dangerous. You'll be safer here than you would be anywhere else, but safe is relative. There are rules you'll need to follow, things you can't do, places you can't go. A cage. A very nice cage, he corrected. But yes, a cage. At least he wasn't pretending otherwise. Alara picked up her fork again, forced herself to eat. The food still tasted like nothing, but her body needed fuel, and something told her she'd need her strength for whatever came next. They ate in silence. When Mrs. Chen cleared the plates, Lucien stood. I have work to do. You're free to explore the house, the grounds. The library's on the second floor if you read. Mrs. Chen can show you where everything is. What are the rules? Alara asked. He paused. The rules? You said there are rules I need to follow. What are they? Don't leave the property without me. Don't answer the door. Don't speak to strangers. If something feels wrong, find me or Mrs. Chen immediately. That's it? That's it. For now. What happens if I break them? Something dark crossed his face. Don't. He left. Alara sat alone in the dining room, candles burning down, the house settling into silence around her. Don't leave the property. Don't answer the door. Don't speak to strangers. A very nice cage. She thought about her apartment, small, cramped, cheap. But it had been hers, her space, her choices. Now she was in a mansion with a husband she didn't know, following rules she didn't understand, living a life that belonged to someone else. Alara looked down at her ring. Still there, still heavy. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway. Can I get you anything, dear? The library. Can you show me where it is? If she was going to be trapped, she might as well have books. The library was exactly what she'd hoped for. 2 stories of floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with thousands of books. A rolling ladder, deep chairs near a fireplace, windows overlooking the grounds, the kind of room you could lose yourself in. Alara ran her fingers along the spines. Fiction, philosophy, history, poetry. All organized with careful precision, which somehow fit what she knew of Lucien, a man who controlled everything, even his books. She pulled out a collection of poetry. Mary Oliver. The pages were worn like someone had read it many times. She was my mother's favorite. Alara spun. Lucien stood in the doorway, jacket off, tie loosened. He looked almost human like that. Almost. I thought you had work, she said. I do, but I wanted to make sure you found this place. He moved into the room, hands in his pockets. You can take anything, read anywhere in the house. This is yours now, too. Nothing here is mine. Legally, it is. That's not what I meant. I know. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. It will be, though, eventually. You'll find your favorite chair, your favorite window, the books you come back to. It'll start feeling like home. You sound very sure of that. I am. Why? Because I need it to, he said simply. I need you to be safe here, happy, if possible. Because the alternative is you being miserable and me having to watch it, and I'd rather not. It was possibly the most honest thing he'd said all night. Elara studied him, this man who'd bought her, stalked her, married her, and now stood in his library looking almost vulnerable. "What if I can't be happy here?" she asked. "Then we'll figure something else out." "You make it sound simple." "It's not, but I'm good at solving problems." "Is that what I am? A problem to solve?" "No." He shook his head. "You're the solution. I just haven't figured out what to yet." He left her with that cryptic statement, footsteps fading down the hall. Elara stood alone in the library, surrounded by thousands of stories, and wondered which one she was living now. The fairy tale where the girl is saved by the wealthy man? Except she hadn't been saved. She'd been bought. The horror story where the girl is trapped by the monster? Except Lucien didn't feel like a monster. He felt like something more complicated. Elara settled into one of the chairs by the fireplace, the Mary Oliver collection in her lap. Outside the windows, the sun was setting, painting the grounds in shades of orange and gold. Beautiful. Peaceful. Completely at odds with the chaos in her head. She opened the book, found a poem about wild geese and soft animal bodies and love for the world. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert, repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. The words blurred. Elara closed the book, pressed it to her chest. 3 days ago, she'd buried her father. Today, she'd married a stranger. Tomorrow, she'd wake up in a cage made of marble and money and try to figure out how to survive. But tonight, she'd sit in this library and remember that somewhere under all the fear and anger and confusion, she was still herself. Still Elara. Still real. Even if nothing else was. The first week passed in a blur of empty rooms and careful distance. Elara learned the house by walking it at night when Lucien was locked in his office and the staff had gone home. She learned that the West Wing was strictly off-limits, Lucien's private workspace guarded by men who appeared from nowhere whenever she got too close. She learned that Mrs. Chen started work at 6 in the morning and never asked questions. She learned that the gardens were beautiful but felt like a museum exhibit, perfect and untouchable. She learned that Lucien was gone more than he was home. He left before she woke most mornings, returned after she'd gone to bed. They had dinner together exactly 3 times that first week, each meal punctuated by long silences and careful conversation that never went anywhere real. He asked about her day. She gave vague answers. She asked about his work. He deflected. It was like living with a ghost who occasionally materialized to make sure she was still breathing. On the 8th day, Elara woke to find a note slid under her door. Breakfast on the terrace. 8 a.m. L. She almost didn't go. The idea of forced intimacy over eggs and coffee made her want to crawl back into bed. But curiosity won. That and the fact that Mrs. Chen had clearly been instructed to prepare something special. She could smell fresh bread from 3 rooms away. The terrace overlooked the back gardens. Someone had set a small table with 2 chairs, coffee already brewing in a French press, pastries arranged on a plate that probably cost more than her old weekly paycheck. Lucien was already there, dressed for work in another perfectly tailored suit, reading something on his phone. He looked up when she approached. "You came. You left a note under my door like a passive-aggressive roommate. I was curious." Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. "Sit." Elara sat. The coffee was good. The pastries were better. She ate in silence, watching the gardens, feeling his eyes on her. "You've been avoiding me," he said finally. "You've been gone." "Not the same thing." She looked at him. "What do you want me to say? That I'm thrilled to be here? That this is going great?" "I want you to be honest." "Fine. Honest?" She set down her coffee. "I feel like I'm living in a very expensive waiting room. Everything here is beautiful and cold, and nothing feels real. I spend my days reading books in your library and walking in circles and trying not to think about the fact that I'm trapped. You're not trapped. I can't leave the property. For your safety. Says the man who put bars on my cage." She stood. "Thank you for breakfast. It was lovely, just like everything else here." She made it 3 steps before his voice stopped her. "I have to go to the city today. I thought you might want to come." Elara turned slowly. "What?" "You said you feel trapped. Come with me. We'll go out." "You just said I can't leave the property." "You can't leave alone. With me is different." She studied his face, looking for the catch. Why? Because you're right, you are trapped, and I can't change that, but I can make it less suffocating. He stood, pocketed his phone. We leave in an hour. Wear something comfortable. He walked past her into the house, leaving her standing on the terrace with half-eaten pastries and more questions than answers. The car was different this time. Still black, still expensive, but smaller. A two-seater that Lucien drove himself, which felt strange after a week of being chauffeured everywhere. Elara had changed into jeans and a jacket, unsure what comfortable meant in Lucien's world. He'd traded his suit jacket for a black sweater but kept the expensive watch and the controlled expression. They drove in silence for the first 20 minutes. The gates opened automatically. The private road gave way to suburban streets that gradually became more urban. Elara watched the city appear through the windshield, familiar landmarks she hadn't seen in over a week. "Where are we going?" she asked. "You'll see." "That's not an answer." "No, but it's all you're getting." She almost argued, then decided it wasn't worth it. At least she was outside, moving, breathing air that didn't taste like marble and money. Lucien navigated the city like someone who knew every shortcut, every back street. They ended up in the old warehouse district, buildings that had been converted into lofts and galleries and coffee shops that charged $8 for a cappuccino. He parked in front of a building with large windows and a wooden sign that read Second Chapter Books. Elara's breath caught. "This is where you used to work," Lucien finished. "I know." She turned to look at him. "Why would you bring me here?" "Because you miss it, and because I thought you might want to see that it's still here, still running." He got out of the car. Elara sat frozen for a moment, staring at the bookstore through the windshield. She'd worked there for 3 years. Knew every shelf, every creaky floorboard, every customer who came in looking for specific obscure titles. She'd quit over the phone a week and a half ago, hadn't been back since. Lucien opened her door. "Coming?" The bell above the door chimed when they entered, the same cheerful sound that had marked Elara's shifts for years. The smell hit her immediately. Old paper, coffee from the small cafe in the back. That specific mustiness of used books that some people hated, and she'd always loved. Sarah was behind the counter, the same girl Elara had protected from Michael months ago. She looked up, and her eyes went wide. "Elara? Oh my God!" Before Elara could respond, Sarah was around the counter and hugging her. You just called and quit, and we didn't know what happened. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Elara managed. "I'm sorry I didn't explain. It was complicated." Sarah pulled back, noticed Lucien for the first time. Her expression shifted, recognition maybe, or wariness. "Hi." "Sarah, this is—" Elara hesitated. What was he? Her husband? Her keeper? "This is Lucien." "Her husband," Lucien supplied smoothly. He extended a hand. "We met last summer." Sarah shook his hand carefully, like he might break it. "Right. The guy who bought the Emily Dickinson collection. You remember? Kind of hard to forget someone who drops $2,000 on old books without blinking." Elara stared at him. "You spent $2,000 here?" They were first editions. Seemed worth it. Sarah was watching them both with undisguised curiosity. "So you two got married?" "Recently," Elara said. "Very recently." "That's... Wow. Congratulations." It came out like a question. Sarah had always been perceptive. "Is Robert here?" Elara asked, changing the subject. Robert was the owner, a retired literature professor who'd opened the shop 15 years ago and ran it with more passion than business sense. "In the back. He'll want to see you. I'll grab him." Sarah disappeared through a doorway. Elara moved deeper into the store, running her fingers along familiar spines. Everything was exactly as she remembered. The poetry section in the corner. The mismatched chairs where people could sit and read. The coffee stains on the floor from when someone had knocked over a whole tray of drinks. "You loved it here," Lucien said. Not a question. "It was the first place that felt like mine. After my mom died, my dad was not present. The bookstore was where I went to breathe." "Why did you work 2 jobs?" "Because one didn't pay enough." She pulled out a book, some beat-up mystery novel. "And because my father's medical bills were piling up faster than I could keep up. Not that it mattered in the end." "You resent him. Your father." Elara put the book back. "I love him. Loved him. But yeah, I resent him too. For being weak, for giving up, for leaving me with this mess. That's honest." You said you wanted honest. Robert emerged from the back and Alara found herself wrapped in another hug. The old man smelled like pipe tobacco and old paper, exactly the way he always had. Alara Vance, you disappear for over a week and poor Sarah thinks you've been kidnapped. Not kidnapped, Alara said. Just married. Robert held her at arm's length, studying her with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Married. To him, I presume. He nodded at Lucien. To me, Lucien confirmed. Robert released Alara, turned his attention to Lucien. You're the one who bought the Dickinson collection, and the Whitman, and that entire shelf of modernist poetry I'd had for 6 years. Guilty. You read them or just collect them? I read. Good. Hate people who buy books as decoration. Robert looked between them. This is a strange match. You have no idea, Alara muttered. They stayed for an hour. Alara helped Sarah shelve new arrivals, fell back into the rhythm of the work like she'd never left. Lucien wandered the store, pulling books seemingly at random, reading passages, putting most back but keeping a few. When he came to the counter with his selections, more poetry, some philosophy, a novel Alara had never heard of, Robert rang him up with a knowing smile. You're buying books to impress my former employee. I'm buying books because they're good books. Sure you are. Robert bagged them. Take care of her. She's special. I know. Outside, the sun was higher, the street busier. Alara breathed in the city air, let herself feel something like normal for the first time in days. Thank you, she said, for bringing me here. You don't have to thank me for basic decency. In my experience, basic decency is pretty rare. They walked down the block, no destination, just moving. Lucien kept pace beside her, his presence a constant weight she was starting to get used to. Can I ask you something? Alara said. You can ask. I might not answer. What do you actually do? For work? He was quiet for long enough that she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I solve problems. That's vague. It's accurate. People come to me with problems they can't solve themselves. I solve them. What kind of problems? The expensive kind. Alara stopped walking. Lucien. He stopped too, turned to face her. You want the truth? I want to understand who I married. I run several businesses, some legitimate, some less so. I broker deals between people who don't trust each other. I provide protection to people who need it. I make problems disappear when the law can't or won't. You're a criminal. I'm a businessman operating in gray areas. There's a difference. Is there? To me, yes. He held her gaze. I don't hurt innocent people. I don't deal in drugs or trafficking or anything that exploits the vulnerable, but I do operate outside traditional legal structures. I do things that would make you uncomfortable if you knew the details. Like forcing women into marriage? Like protecting women from worse fates, he corrected. Your father's creditors weren't good people, Alara. They would have sold you to someone who wouldn't have given you your own room, who wouldn't have cared if you were comfortable or safe. At least with me, you're both. That's a low bar. Welcome to my world. A man passed them on the sidewalk, did a double take when he saw Lucien, then hurried on. Alara noticed. Noticed the way people gave them a wide berth. Noticed the way Lucien tracked every person, every car, like he was constantly calculating threats. Are we safe here? She asked. Relatively. What does that mean? It means I have people watching. It means I chose a public location where most people won't try anything. It means if someone is stupid enough to start something, it'll end badly for them, not us. That's not comforting. It's realistic. He started walking again. This is my life. I can't change that, but I can control how much of it touches you. They ended up at a small cafe, the kind with outdoor seating and overpriced salads. Lucien ordered coffee. Alara ordered tea she didn't want. Tell me about your mother, he said. The question surprised her. Why? Because you mentioned her, and because I want to know. Alara wrapped her hands around her mug. The ceramic was warm, real. She died when I was 12. Cancer. It was fast, 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. My father never recovered. That's when he started gambling. That's when he started everything. Drinking, gambling, making bad decisions, and worse friends. She stared into her tea. He used to be different, before. He was a good dad, taught me to read, took me to the library every weekend. But after Mom died, it was like he died too. Just took him 15 more years to stop breathing. You stayed with him anyway. He was my father. What was I supposed to do? Leave. Build your own life. I tried. Got into college, had a scholarship and everything. But then he got sick, and the bills started coming, and someone had to deal with it. She looked up at Lucian. You probably think I'm an idiot. I think you're loyal. There's a difference. Loyal or stupid still ends the same way. Maybe. He leaned back in his chair. For what it's worth, your father loved you, in his way. How would you know? Because he could have sold you to worse people, could have made more money, cleared more debt. But he specifically waited until I made an offer, told my intermediary that he wanted guarantees you'd be safe. That mattered to him, even at the end. Alara's throat tightened. He told you that? Not me directly, but the message was clear. She blinked hard, refusing to cry in public. I wish he'd just talked to me, told me what was happening, instead of just leaving me to figure it out. Some people don't know how to ask for help. Speaking from experience? Always. They sat in silence. The city moved around them, people rushing to work, tourists taking photos, someone's dog barking at a pigeon. Normal life. The kind Alara wasn't sure she'd ever have again. I don't know how to do this, she said quietly. Be married to you. Live in your world. I don't know the rules. Then we'll figure them out together. You make it sound simple. It's not. But staying here, trying, that's simple. Everything after is just details. Her phone buzzed. Alara pulled it out, saw a text from an unknown number. How's married life? M. Margaret, the lawyer. Alara had forgotten about her in the chaos of the last week. Problem? Lucian asked. Just Margaret checking in. She does that. Feels guilty. Should she? Probably. She facilitated this whole arrangement. He pulled out his own phone, checked something. We should head back soon. I have a meeting at 3. Of course you do. They drove back in comfortable silence, or as comfortable as silence could be between two people who were legally bound, but essentially strangers. Alara watched the city give way to suburbs. Suburbs give way to private roads and gates and isolation. Back to the cage. But it felt slightly less suffocating now, like the walls had moved back a few inches, like she could breathe a little deeper. Lucian parked in front of the house. Neither of them moved to get out immediately. Thank you, Alara said again. For today. I know you didn't have to. I did, actually. If I want this to work, I can't keep you locked up like a prisoner. Today was as much for me as it was for you. How do you figure? Because I need you to not hate me. And that's hard to accomplish when I'm never here. He got out of the car. Alara followed, the books he'd bought clutched in one hand. Mrs. Chen met them at the door with the kind of look that said something had happened. Mr. Moreau, you have a visitor. Lucian's expression went cold. I'm not expecting anyone. I know, but he insisted, said it was urgent. Who? Marcus Voss. The name meant nothing to Alara, but it clearly meant something to Lucian. His whole body tensed. Where is he? The East Sitting Room. I had Thomas and David stay with him. Thomas and David, the guards. Alara had seen them around the property, always watching, always armed. Lucian turned to Alara. Go upstairs. What's happening? Nothing you need to worry about. Just go upstairs, stay in your room, and don't come out until I come get you. Lucien, now, Alara. The command in his voice left no room for argument. Mrs. Chen touched her elbow gently. Come, dear. Let's get you settled. Alara let herself be led away, but she looked back once. Lucian was already moving toward the sitting room, his phone to his ear, speaking in rapid tones too quiet for her to hear. Something was wrong, very wrong. Mrs. Chen brought her to her room, then hesitated at the door. It'll be all right. Mr. Moreau knows what he's doing. Who's Marcus Voss? Someone from before. Before you. That's all Mrs. Chen would say before she left, closing the door firmly behind her. Alara paced her room, tried to read. Couldn't focus. The books from the bookstore sat on her nightstand, mocking her with their promise of escape into other stories. She moved to the window, looked out over the grounds. From here she could see the east wing, the sitting room Lucien had gone to. The windows were covered with heavy curtains, nothing visible. An hour passed. Then 2. Finally, her door opened. Lucien stood there, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked rattled. His hair was messed up, like he'd been running his hands through it. His jaw was tight. "Is everything okay?" Alara asked. "Define okay." He walked into her room, started pacing. "Marcus Voss is a former associate. We had a disagreement 6 months ago. He thought he was owed money. I disagreed. He made threats. I made counter-threats. It got ugly." "What did he want?" "To renegotiate. Said he heard I'd gotten married, wanted to offer congratulations and see if that changed anything." Lucien laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "He was fishing, trying to see if you're a weakness." "Am I?" He stopped pacing, looked at her directly. "Yes." The honesty of it hit her hard. "What did you tell him?" "That if he or anyone associated with him comes near you, I'll make what happened 6 months ago look like a friendly conversation." "What happened 6 months ago?" "He lost 3 fingers and the ability to work in this city." Alara sat down on the bed. "You cut off his fingers?" "I didn't personally, but I gave the order." "Because of money?" "Because he threatened someone under my protection. I don't take that lightly." Lucy Tien moved closer. "I need you to understand something. The people in my world, they look for weaknesses. They probe. They test. And now that you're here, you're the obvious target." "So what does that mean?" "It means the rules get stricter. It means you don't go anywhere without me or security I trust. It means when I say go to your room, you go. No questions. I'm not a child. No, you're my wife, which in my world makes you a target for anyone who wants to hurt me." Alara stood. "Then maybe you shouldn't have married me." "Too late for that." "Is it? You could let me go. Divorce me. I'll disappear. You'll—" "No." The word was flat, final. "That's not happening." "Why not? If I'm such a liability—" "Because I don't give up what's mine." He closed the distance between them. "You think I didn't calculate this risk? I knew bringing you here would paint a target on your back. I did it anyway because the alternative was worse." "The alternative being?" "You being passed around to my competitors, or killed to settle the debt, or worse." His voice dropped. "At least here I can protect you. By keeping me locked up. By keeping you alive." They stood inches apart, the tension between them thick enough to cut. Alara could see the frustration in his eyes, the fear he was trying to hide. Fear for her. "I hate this," she whispered. "I know. I hate feeling helpless. I hate being the thing you have to protect. I hate that my father's mistakes are still ruining my life." "Then let me fix it." "You can't fix everything." "Watch me." His phone rang. He answered it without looking away from her. "What?" A pause. "Good. Make sure he understands it's permanent." Another pause. "No, I don't care what he thinks. If I see him again, we're past warnings." He hung up. "Marcus is leaving the city. Won't be a problem anymore." "Just like that?" "Just like that." Alara sank back onto the bed. Her legs felt weak. "This is your life, this constant threat, this always looking over your shoulder." "Yes." "And you expect me to just accept it?" "I expect you to survive it, with me." He knelt in front of her, putting them at eye level. "I know I'm asking a lot. I know this isn't fair, but I need you to trust that I won't let anything happen to you." "Why should I trust you?" "Because despite everything, I haven't lied to you yet. And I won't start now." She wanted to argue, wanted to scream at the unfairness of all of it. But he was right. He had been honest, brutally so, about what he did, who he was, what her life would be like here. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay. I'll try to trust you, to make this work. But I need things from you too. Name them. Honesty. Always, no matter how bad it is. Done. And I need to leave this house sometimes. I can't be locked up all the time. I'll go crazy." Lucien hesitated. "Within reason. With security." "Within reason," she agreed. "Anything else?" "Yeah, stop treating me like I'm made of glass. If I'm in danger, I need to know. If something's wrong, I need to know. Don't protect me by keeping me in the dark." He studied her for a long moment. "That one's harder. My instinct is to shield you from all of this." "Your instinct is wrong. Information is protection too." A small smile tugged at his mouth. "You're smarter than I gave you credit for." Is that a compliment? It's an observation. He stood, offered her his hand. She took it, let him pull her to her feet. Dinner? He asked. I should probably eat something. They went downstairs together. Mrs. Chen had already set the table, like she'd known they'd work it out. Or maybe she just always prepared for the possibility of civility. The meal was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Lucien told her about a property deal he was working on. Alara told him about a book she'd been reading. Normal conversation. Almost like a normal couple. Almost. After dinner, Lucien disappeared into his office. Alara went back to the library, pulled down the Mary Oliver collection again. Found the poem about wild geese. You do not have to be good. She was starting to understand that. Starting to understand that maybe surviving didn't mean being perfect. Maybe it just meant being real enough to weather whatever came next. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Margaret, checking in. Everything all right? Alara typed back, define all right. The response came quickly. Fair enough, call if you need anything. But what would she call about? What would she even say? The marriage was legal. The debt was cleared. She was exactly where the law said she should be. Trapped in a very nice cage with a man who'd cut off someone's fingers for threatening the wrong person. A man who read poetry and bought books to impress her. A man who'd been watching her for months, learning her, wanting her for reasons she still didn't fully understand. Alara closed the book, leaned her head back against the chair. This was her life now. These contradictions. This constant tension between fear and something that might eventually be trust. She could fight it, could make every day a battle. Or she could do what she'd told Lucien. Try. Actually try to make this work. Not because she had to, not because she was trapped, but because somewhere in the mess of the last 2 weeks, she'd started to see glimpses of something real beneath Lucien's control. Moments where the mask slipped and she saw the man underneath. The man who brought her to her favorite bookstore because he knew she was suffocating. The man who offered her honesty when lies would have been easier. The man who'd chosen her not because she was convenient, but because she'd protected a girl in a bookstore and he'd decided that mattered. Maybe she was an idiot. Maybe this would all blow up spectacularly. But at least it would be her choice to try. At least it would be real. 3 weeks into the marriage, Alara woke to shouting. Not the controlled, measured tone she'd gotten used to from Lucien during their careful dinners and stilted conversations. This was raw, angry, coming from somewhere downstairs. She checked her phone. 4:30 in the morning. Still dark outside. The smart thing would be to stay in bed, follow the rules. Let Lucien handle whatever crisis was erupting in his world of shadows and threats. But Alara had never been particularly good at doing the smart thing. She pulled on a robe and opened her door. The hallway was dark except for a light coming from the first floor. The shouting had stopped, replaced by low, intense voices she couldn't make out. She crept down the stairs, keeping to the edges where the wood didn't creak. The voices were coming from Lucien's office, the one room in the house she'd been explicitly told to avoid. The door was open a crack. Telling you it's not sustainable, a man's voice said. Not Lucien. Rougher. Older. You keep making exceptions, people start thinking you've gone soft. I don't care what people think. That was Lucien. Cold. Controlled again. Whatever had made him shout was locked back down. You should. Reputation is currency in our world. You know that better than anyone. My reputation is fine. Is it? You married some girl to settle a debt. You let Voss walk away with a warning. You've turned down 3 contracts in the last month. Good money, because they were too messy. That's not the Lucien Moreau I know. Silence. Alara pressed closer to the door, her heart hammering. Things change, Lucien said finally. Yeah, they do. Question is whether you're changing for the better or if you're getting distracted. Careful, Anton. Someone needs to say it. This girl, Alara, she's making you hesitate, making you second guess. That's dangerous. She's my wife. Of course she factors into my decisions. She's a liability. You said it yourself. A target. Every enemy you've made in the last decade is looking at her and seeing opportunity. Then they'll learn what happens when they try. Will they? Or will they learn that Lucien Moreau has a weak spot now, that all they need to do is threaten the right person and you'll fold? The sound of something hitting a desk. Hard. Get out. Lucien, I said get out. We're done here. Footsteps. Alara barely had time to duck into the shadows before a man emerged from the office. He was older, maybe 60, with gray hair and the kind of face that had seen too much. He paused in the hallway, looked around like he sensed someone watching, then headed for the front door. Alara waited until she heard it close before moving. She should go back upstairs. Should pretend she hadn't heard any of that. Instead, she stepped into the doorway of Lucien's office. He was standing by the window, hands braced on the desk, head down. The office was exactly what she'd imagined. Dark wood, expensive furniture, papers scattered everywhere, a safe in the corner, monitors showing security feeds of the property. "I told you to stay in your room when things like this happen," he said without turning around. "You were shouting. I got worried." "Worried about me or worried about what I might do?" "Both, maybe." He turned then. He looked exhausted, lines around his eyes she hadn't noticed before. The perfect control he always maintained was cracking at the edges. "How much did you hear?" he asked. "Enough. Who was that?" "Anton, my—" He paused. "I was going to say friend, but I'm not sure that's accurate anymore. He thinks I'm making you weak. He thinks you're a distraction. There's a difference." "Is there?" Alara stepped into the room properly. "He's not wrong, is he? You have turned down contracts. You did let Voss go. You're changing how you operate because of me. So what if I am? So maybe he has a point. Maybe I am a liability." Lucien crossed to her in 3 strides. His hands came up to frame her face, firm but not painful. "Listen to me. Anton is from the old guard. He thinks power comes from fear and nothing else. He's wrong." "Is he? In your world, my world is changing, has to change, because what worked 10 years ago doesn't work now." His thumbs brushed her cheekbones. "You think I don't know what people are saying? That I've gone soft? That marriage has made me weak? I know, I don't care." "You should care. If it puts you in danger. I've been in danger my entire adult life. This is nothing new. But it's danger because of me. That's different." He dropped his hands, stepped back, ran one hand through his hair, messing it up further. 3 months ago, a man came to me, said his daughter had gotten involved with some very bad people, drugs, debts, the usual spiral. He wanted me to make it go away. I took the contract, made the problem disappear, efficient, clean, profitable. He moved back to the window. 2 weeks later, I found out the daughter was 16. The bad people were her dealers, and making the problem disappear meant they'd killed her for being a liability. Alara's stomach turned. "Lucien, I didn't pull the trigger, didn't even give the order directly. But it happened because of a contract I took without asking enough questions. Because I was too focused on the money and the efficiency and maintaining my reputation to care about details like age or addiction or whether there were other solutions. That's not on you. You didn't know. I didn't want to know. That's worse." He turned to face her. "After that, I started asking different questions. Started turning down work that felt wrong. Anton called it going soft. I call it having standards. And I'm part of that? The new standards? You're part of remembering why any of this matters. Why I do what I do." He moved closer again, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight he carried. "I told you I solved problems. What I didn't tell you is that I started solving the wrong ones. For the wrong reasons. You reminded me there are other ways. By getting myself sold to pay my father's debts? By standing up to a drunk twice your size for a girl you barely knew? By working yourself to exhaustion trying to fix someone else's mistakes? By being decent when you had every reason not to be?" His voice dropped. "You're not a liability, Alara. You're the first real thing I've had in years." The words hung between them. Outside, dawn was starting to break, painting the sky in shades of gray and pink. "Anton's scared," Alara said quietly. "He thinks you're changing too much, that it'll get you killed." "Maybe, or maybe it'll keep me alive longer than the alternative." "What alternative?" "Becoming the kind of man who doesn't care about 16-year-old girls getting killed. The kind who sees people as transactions and nothing else." He touched her face again, gentler this time. "I don't want to be that man anymore." "What do you want to be?" "I'm still figuring that out." They stood like that for a moment, the early morning light filtering through the windows, the house quiet around them. "You should sleep," Lucien said finally. "It's still early." "What about you?" "I have work to do." "Lucien, I'm fine. Go. Sleep." It was a dismissal, gentle but firm. Alara left, looking back once to see him already turned to his desk, his phone in hand, back in the mode she recognized. The crime lord. The problem solver. The man who cut off fingers and made threats and lived in a world of constant danger. But also the man who'd stopped taking contracts that felt wrong, who read poetry in the middle of the night, who'd been watching her for months because she'd done one decent thing in a bookstore. Alara went back to her room, but didn't sleep. She watched the sun come up through her window and thought about liability and change, and whether it was possible to be someone's weak spot and their strength at the same time. 2 days later, a man came to the door. Alara was in the library when Mrs. Chen appeared, looking worried. "There's someone here. He says he needs to speak with Mr. Moreau." "Is Lucien here?" "He's in the city. Won't be back until this evening." "Did you call him?" "He's not answering, and this man, he says it's urgent." Alara closed her book. "What does he want?" "He won't say, just that it's about a debt." Mrs. Chen's voice dropped. "He has a child with him, a boy, maybe 8 or 9. A child." Alara stood. "Where are they?" "I left them at the gate. Thomas is watching them, but show me." Mrs. Chen looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Alara's expression stopped her. They went downstairs, out the front door, down the long drive to the gates. A man stood there, thin and nervous-looking, with a boy clutching his hand. The child had dark circles under his eyes and clothes that had been clean once but were showing wear. Thomas, the guard, stood between them and the property with his arms crossed. He looked at Alara when she approached. "Ma'am, Mr. Moreau said—" "I know what he said. I just want to talk to them." She turned to the man. "I'm Alara Moreau. What's this about?" The man's eyes widened slightly at her name. "You're his wife?" "I am." "What do you need?" He glanced at Thomas, at Mrs. Chen, clearly uncomfortable. "I need to speak with Mr. Moreau about a debt. I was told he's the one who can help." "What kind of debt?" "The kind that gets people killed if they don't pay." His grip on his son's hand tightened. "I made mistakes, borrowed money I couldn't pay back. Now they're threatening my family." Alara looked at the boy. He was staring at the ground, silent. Too silent for a kid his age. "Who's threatening you?" "Does it matter? They're the kind of people who don't make idle threats." "It matters if you want help." The man hesitated, then said, "Victor Kozlov and his people." Thomas went rigid. "You need to leave. Now." "Please," the man said. "I heard Mr. Moreau sometimes helps people. Makes problems go away. I can't pay much, but—" "How much do you owe?" Alara asked. 15,000. I know it's a lot, but that's nothing. In Lucien's world, that's pocket change. For him, maybe. For me, it might as well be 1,000,000. Alara looked at Mrs. Chen. "Can you bring them some water and something for the boy to eat?" "Mrs. Moreau," Thomas said. Mr. Moreau's instructions were clear. No visitors without his approval. "I'm not inviting them in. I'm giving them water while we wait for Lucien to call back." She pulled out her phone. "Mrs. Chen, please?" The older woman nodded and headed back to the house. Thomas looked like he wanted to argue, but didn't. Alara dialed Lucien's number. It went to voicemail. She tried again. Same result. "What's your name?" she asked the man. "David? David Chen." "Any relation to Mrs. Chen?" "No, common name." "Right." She knelt down to the boy's level. "What's your name?" The child looked at his father, who nodded. "Michael." "Hi, Michael. You hungry?" A small nod. Mrs. Chen returned with water and sandwiches. Michael took one carefully, like he wasn't sure it was allowed. David Chen didn't touch the food. "How did you hear about Lucien?" Alara asked. "Word gets around. People in certain situations, they talk. Someone told me Lucien Moreau solves problems, that he's expensive but fair." "And you thought showing up at his house was a good idea?" "I thought I was out of options." Alara's phone rang. Lucien, finally. She answered. "There's a man here, David Chen. He says he owes money to Victor Kozlov and needs help." Silence on the other end. Then, "Tell Thomas to send him away. He has a kid with him, Lucien, a little boy. That's not my problem." "It could be." 15,000. That's nothing to you." "It's the principle. I don't negotiate with people who show up uninvited." "Then make an exception." "Alara, please, just talk to him. 5 minutes." More silence. She could practically hear him thinking, weighing options, calculating risks. Put him on the phone, Lucian said finally. Alara handed it to David Chen. He wants to talk to you. The man took it with shaking hands. Mr. Moreau? Yes. Yes, sir, I understand that, but... He listened. I can provide documentation, bank statements, the original loan paperwork, everything. More listening. I appreciate that, thank you. Yes, I'll wait. He handed the phone back to Alara. He's coming home, Lucian said, and we're going to have a conversation about boundaries. Looking forward to it. I'm serious, Alara. You don't know these people. You don't know what you're getting involved in. So explain it to me. That's what we agreed on. Honesty, remember? He sighed. Viktor Kozlov is worse than the people your father owed money to. He's violent, unpredictable, and has a habit of making examples out of people who can't pay. Then this man needs help. This man made bad choices. That's not my responsibility. But it could be. You said you started asking different questions, started having standards. Well, here's a question. What happens to that little boy if his father can't pay? Lucien was quiet for a long moment. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Keep them at the gate. Don't let them inside the property. He hung up. 23 minutes later, Lucian's car pulled through the gates. He parked and got out, his expression unreadable. David Chen stood straighter, trying to look less desperate and failing. Mr. Moreau, thank you for... Don't thank me yet. Lucien's gaze flicked to Alara. Inside. Now. I want to hear this. This isn't a negotiation. No, it's a conversation. You promised me honesty, remember? That includes seeing how this works. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite approval, but close. Fine, but you stay quiet and you follow my lead. Understood? Understood. He turned back to David Chen. Show me the paperwork. The man pulled out a folder, hands still shaking. Lucian took it, scanned the documents with practiced speed. His jaw tightened. You borrowed from Kozlov directly? Not one of his intermediaries? I didn't know who he was at the time. Someone referred me. Said it was a short-term loan, easy terms. Nothing with Kozlov is easy. Lucian handed back the folder. You owe $15,000. When's it due? 3 days ago. So you're already late. Which means the interest is compounding and Kozlov's people are already looking for you. I know. That's why I came here. And what exactly do you think I can do? I heard you could make it go away. Negotiate. Something. Lucian laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want me to negotiate with Viktor Kozlov on your behalf? For $15,000? I'll pay you back. Whatever it takes. I just need time and you can't pay me back. You couldn't even pay back $15,000. What makes you think you could afford my rates? David Chen's face crumpled. Please, I have a son. If something happens to me, then you should have thought about that before you borrowed money from a loan shark. The words were harsh. True, maybe, but harsh. Alara felt something twist in her chest. Lucien, she said quietly. He looked at her. She couldn't read his expression, but something passed between them. An understanding, maybe, or a test. How did you plan to use the money? Lucien asked David. Originally, my wife. She needed surgery. We didn't have insurance, and the hospitals wouldn't help without payment up front. Where is she now? She died 6 months ago. The surgery didn't work. Michael's hand tightened on his father's. The boy still hadn't said more than his name, but his eyes were wet now. Lucian was quiet for a long moment. Alara watched him think, watched the calculation happening behind his eyes. I'll pay your debt, he said finally. On one condition. David Chen's eyes went wide. Anything, name it. You leave the city. Take your son and go somewhere Kozlov can't find you. Start over, and you never ever borrow money from people like him again. Yes, of course, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm not done. Lucian's voice went cold. If I ever hear that you've gone back to old habits, if I hear you've put your son in danger again through your own stupidity, I'll make what Kozlov would have done to you look merciful. Are we clear? The man went pale. Crystal clear. I swear, I'll never... Thomas will give you the contact information for someone who can help you relocate. You'll have 72 hours to be out of the city. After that, you're on your own. Thank you, Mr. Moreau. Thank you. Lucien nodded to Thomas, who escorted David and Michael back toward a waiting car. Elara and Lucien stood in silence until they were gone. That was kind, Elara said. That was stupid. Anton would have my head if he knew. But you did it anyway. Because you asked me to. He turned to face her. This is what you wanted to see, right? How it works. I just made an enemy angrier for $15,000 and a sob story. You helped a kid keep his father. I helped a man avoid consequences for his own bad decisions. There's a difference. Is there? Lucien started walking back to the house. Elara followed. You don't understand the world I operate in. Every choice has consequences. Every favor creates debt. Every moment of weakness is something someone can exploit. So what happens now with Kozlov? I'll call him, explain the situation. Pay the debt plus interest plus a premium for the inconvenience. He'll accept because refusing would be bad business. And that's it? That's it. Unless he decides to take it personally, in which case things get complicated. They reached the house. Mrs. Chen was waiting by the door, her expression carefully neutral. That was a risk, Lucien said to Elara. Calling me, asking me to help. You didn't know what I'd say. I had a guess. Based on what? Based on the man who stopped taking contracts that felt wrong. The man who reads poetry and remembers a girl in a bookstore. She held his gaze. The man you're trying to become. And if you'd guessed wrong? Then I would have learned something about who I married. He studied her for a long moment. You're going to be trouble, aren't you? Probably. Good. He moved past her into the house. I have calls to make. This is going to take the rest of the afternoon. Lucien? He stopped. Thank you for listening. Don't thank me. I might regret this tomorrow. But he didn't sound like he regretted it. He sounded tired and frustrated, and maybe a little bit like he was surprised at himself. Elara went back to the library, back to her books and her window and her thoughts. Outside, the gardens were perfect in the afternoon light. Beautiful. Controlled. Safe. But she'd just watched Lucien make a decision that was none of those things. She'd watched him choose compassion over calculation, risk over reputation, because she'd asked him to. That power terrified her. The power to change someone, to influence their choices. What if she pushed too hard? What if she asked for the wrong thing at the wrong time and got him killed? But also, what if that power was mutual? What if Lucien was changing her too, teaching her that safety sometimes meant rules and distance, that kindness could coexist with violence, that the world wasn't as simple as she'd wanted to believe? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You don't know what you've done. Anton. Had to be. Warning her or threatening her. Hard to say which. Elara deleted it and tried not to think about the 16-year-old girl, the one who died because Lucien took a contract without asking enough questions. The one who'd changed him. Was she changing him too? And if so, was it for better or worse? She didn't have an answer, wasn't sure she ever would. All she knew was that 3 weeks ago, she'd been sold to pay a debt. Now she was here, married to a man who terrified and intrigued her in equal measure, watching him reshape his life around choices she influenced but couldn't control. It should have felt like power. Instead, it felt like drowning and learning to swim at the same time. The call from Viktor Kozlov came 3 days later at 2 in the morning. Elara knew because she heard Lucien's phone ring from down the hall, heard his door open, heard his voice drop to that deadly quiet tone that meant trouble. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to footsteps pace back and forth, trying to make out words and failing. When his door opened again 20 minutes later, she got up. He was in the hallway, already dressed despite the hour. Dark jeans, dark shirt, boots. Not his usual tailored suits. This was different. What's wrong? She asked. Nothing that concerns you. Go back to bed. Lucien. He stopped, turned. Even in the dim hallway light, she could see the tension in his shoulders. Kozlov isn't happy about the Chen situation. Wants to meet. Now, it's the middle of the night. He's making a point, showing he can call me whenever he wants, that he's not scared. Lucien moved past her toward the stairs. I'll handle it. Let me come with you. Absolutely not. Why not? I'm the one who asked you to help David Chen. If there's fallout, then I'll deal with it. That's not negotiable. He stopped at the top of the stairs. Thomas and Marcus will be here. You stay inside. You don't answer the door. You don't leave your room unless the house is on fire. Understood? This is my fault. This is business. It's not personal. It feels personal. Something in his expression softened fractionally. I know, but you being there would make it worse, not better. Kozlov would see you as leverage, as weakness. I can't have that. So what happens? I go. I listen to whatever posturing he needs to do. I pay whatever extra fee he demands to save face. Then I come home. He said it like it was simple, like meeting with a violent loan shark in the middle of the night was just another Tuesday. Maybe for him it was. Be careful, Ilara said. Always am. He left. Ilara stood in the hallway listening to the car pull away, then went back to her room. Sleep was impossible. She tried reading, tried watching something on her phone, tried not thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. Anton's text kept coming back to her. You don't know what you've done. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she'd pushed Lucien into something that would get him killed. Maybe her need to help, to fix things, to be decent was going to destroy the one person keeping her safe. She checked her phone. 3 a.m, no word from Lucien. 3:30, nothing. 4. At 4:15 she heard vehicles, multiple ones. She went to the window, looked out over the front drive. 3 cars. Not Lucien's. They pulled up to the house, and men got out. 6 of them, all armed, all moving with purpose toward the front door. Ilara's heart stopped. Downstairs, she heard shouting. Thomas's voice raised. Then gunfire. The world went sideways. Ilara dropped to the floor, her body moving on instinct she didn't know she had. More gunshots, breaking glass. Footsteps pounding through the house. She crawled to her door, locked it. Her phone was across the room on the nightstand. She scrambled for it, hands shaking so badly she could barely hold it. No signal. They'd cut the lines. Or blocked them somehow. She didn't know enough about this world to know which. Voices in the hallway. Getting closer. Upstairs. Boss said she'd be upstairs. Which room? Check them all. Ilara looked around frantically. The bedroom door wouldn't hold. The window was 3 stories up. The bathroom had a lock, but no other exit. She was trapped. Doors started opening down the hall, slamming, men's voices calling to each other. Not here. Keep looking. Her door handle rattled, once, twice. Then the door exploded inward, the lock giving way under a boot. 2 men stood in the doorway, both armed, both looking at her like she was an object to be collected. Found her, one of them said into a radio. Ilara backed up. Get out. Sorry, sweetheart. Boss wants to see you. I'm not going anywhere with you. The first man stepped into the room. We can do this easy or hard. Your choice. Ilara grabbed the lamp off her nightstand and threw it. It hit him in the shoulder, glass shattering, not enough to stop him, but enough to make him curse. Hard way then. He moved fast, grabbed her arm. Ilara fought, kicking, scratching, trying to remember anything useful from the self-defense class she'd taken in college, and coming up blank. The second man grabbed her other arm. Together they hauled her toward the door. Let me go. Not happening. They dragged her into the hallway. She saw Mrs. Chen on the floor, unconscious but breathing. Saw the destruction, shattered vases, bullet holes in the walls, blood on the marble floor. Thomas's blood. What did you do? Ilara screamed. Shut her up, the first man said. Something hit the back of her head, not hard enough to knock her out, but hard enough to make the world blur. They kept moving down the stairs, through the foyer. Outside, dawn was breaking. The 3 cars were still there, engines running. They shoved her into the back of one. Someone zip-tied her wrists. The plastic bit into her skin. Where are you taking me? No answer. The car started moving. Ilara tried to think through the panic. Lucien had gone to meet Kozlov. These men had attacked the house while he was gone, which meant this was planned, coordinated, a message, or a trap. They drove for maybe 20 minutes. Ilara tried to track the turns, memorize the route, but her head was pounding and everything looked unfamiliar. Finally, they pulled into what looked like an abandoned factory. Broken windows, rusted metal, the kind of place where bad things happened and no one heard you scream. They hauled her out of the car, into the building. The interior was worse than the exterior. Concrete floors, exposed beams, machinery that looked like it hadn't run in decades. And in the center of it all, Lucien. He was on his knees, hands bound behind his back, blood running down the side of his face from a cut above his eye. 3 men surrounded him, guns drawn. Lucien! Alara tried to run to him, but the men holding her arms yanked her back. His head snapped up. Their eyes met across the distance, and she saw something in his expression she'd never seen before. Fear. Not for himself. For her. Well, a voice said. Isn't this touching? A man emerged from the shadows. Older, maybe 50, with silver hair and a face that might have been handsome if it wasn't twisted with cruelty. Victor Kozlov. Had to be. Mr. Moreau, he said, walking a slow circle around Lucien, you've put me in an awkward position. Let her go, Lucien said. His voice was rough. This is between us. Is it? Because I think she's very much part of this. Kozlov stopped in front of Alara. She forced herself to meet his eyes. You're the one who convinced him to help David Chen, to pay his debt, to show mercy. I asked him to help a kid keep his father, Alara said. That's not a crime. No, but it's disrespectful. It sends a message that debts to me can be negotiated, that I'm soft, that if you have the right sob story and the right connections, you don't have to pay. He smiled, and it was the coldest thing Alara had ever seen. I can't have that message spreading. I'll pay you back, Lucien said. Triple what I gave Chen, plus interest, plus whatever you want to make this right. I don't want your money. I have money. Kozlov gestured to one of his men who handed him a gun. I want respect. I want people to remember what happens when someone interferes with my business. He pointed the gun at Alara. No! Lucien lunged forward, but the men holding him kicked him back down. You want to make a point? Make it with me. Leave her out of this. But she's so much more effective. You don't care what happens to you. You've been playing this game too long. But her? Kozlov's smile widened. Her you care about. I can see it. The way you look at her. The way you're willing to beg. Name your price, Lucien said. Anything, just let her go. There is no price. Some lessons can't be bought. Alara's mind raced. She was going to die. Here, in this abandoned factory, because she'd asked Lucien to help someone. Because she'd thought compassion mattered more than reputation. She looked at Lucien, blood still running down his face, hands bound, kneeling in front of a man who was about to kill her while he watched. I'm sorry, she said. Don't. His voice cracked. Don't apologize. This isn't your fault. Isn't it? How sweet, Kozlov said. Last words. I'm almost moved. He cocked the gun. Any final requests? Alara's heart hammered. She couldn't think, couldn't breathe. This couldn't be how it ended. Not like this. Not when she'd just started figuring out how to live in this new life. Not when she'd just started seeing Lucien as something more than her captor. The sound of engines outside made everyone freeze. Kozlov's men turned, guns raised. Through the broken windows, Alara could see vehicles pulling up. A lot of them. What is this? Kozlov demanded. Insurance, Lucien said. The factory doors burst open. Men poured in, more than Kozlov had, all armed, all moving with military precision. Leading them was the massive man with the scarred face Alara had seen at the wedding. He looked at Kozlov with undisguised contempt. Drop the gun, he said. His voice was like gravel. Kozlov laughed. You think you can come in here and I think you're outnumbered 3-1. I think every exit is covered. And I think if you don't drop that gun, in the next 5 seconds, I'm going to put a bullet through your knee and work my way up. One of Kozlov's men raised his weapon. He was dead before he could fire, taken out by 2 shots that came from different directions simultaneously. The body hit the ground with a heavy thud. The rest of Kozlov's men lowered their guns. Smart, the scarred man said. He moved to Lucien, cut his bonds with a knife that appeared from nowhere. You good, boss? I'm fine, Marcus. Get her. Marcus crossed to Alara, cut her zip ties. Her wrists were raw, bleeding slightly. He steadied her when she stumbled. Can you walk? I think so. Lucien was on his feet, crossing to them. He grabbed Alara's face, tilted it up, checking for injuries. Did they hurt you? I'm okay. Your head, it's nothing. He pulled her against him, and Alara felt him shaking, actually shaking. I thought I was too late. How did you know? Marcus was tailing me. When Kozlov's men grabbed me, he called in everyone. We've been planning the assault for the last hour. Alara looked at Marcus. Thank you. Oh, just doing my job, ma'am. Kozlov was still standing there, gun lowered but not dropped, watching this reunion with something like fury on his face. "This isn't over, Moreau." "Yes," Lucian said quietly. "It is." He moved so fast, Alara barely saw it. One moment he was holding her, the next he had Kozlov by the throat, slamming him against one of the concrete pillars. "You made a mistake tonight," Lucian said. His voice was deadly calm. "You thought you could use my wife to hurt me. You thought showing weakness, caring about someone, made me vulnerable." Kozlov clawed at Lucian's hand, gasping. "You were wrong. It doesn't make me weak. It makes me very, very motivated." He leaned closer. "You're going to leave this city, tonight. You're going to take your operation somewhere far away, and you're never going to come back. Because if I see you again, if I even hear your name mentioned in connection with this city, I will hunt you down and I will end you. Not quickly, not mercifully. I will make it last." He released Kozlov, who slumped against the pillar, coughing. "David Chen's debt is cleared, permanently. Any other debts you hold in this city, you're selling them to me for pennies on the dollar. You have 24 hours to make the arrangements before I just take them." "You can't—" Lucian hit him. Once, hard enough to snap his head back. "I can. I am. You came into my home. You threatened my wife. There are consequences for that." He turned to Marcus. "Make sure he understands. Then make sure he's on a plane by morning." "With pleasure, boss." Lucian took Alara's hand. "We're leaving." They walked out of the factory together. The sun was fully up now, painting everything in harsh morning light. Lucian's car was there, along with a dozen others. His people, Alara realized. The network he'd built. All of them here because he'd made one call. He opened the passenger door for her. She got in, still shaking. He slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, then just sat there for a moment, hands on the wheel. "Are you sure you're okay?" he asked. "I don't know. Ask me tomorrow." "Fair enough." He pulled out onto the road. "Mrs. Chen? Unconscious when I saw her. They hit her. She'll be fine. Marcus already called for medical. Thomas took 2 bullets, but he's stable. This is my fault. I pushed you to help David Chen and stop!" Lucian's voice was sharp. This was Kozlov looking for an excuse. If it hadn't been Chen, it would have been something else. He was planning this either way. "How do you know?" "Because men like him always are. He saw me changing, saw me making different choices, saw an opportunity to strike when he thought I was vulnerable." He glanced at her. He was wrong about the vulnerable part. "He almost killed us both." "Almost, but he didn't, because I prepared for this. Because I have people loyal to me who were ready when I needed them." His hands tightened on the wheel. "Because I wasn't going to let anything happen to you." They drove in silence for a while. Alara watched the city pass by through the window, everything looking normal and mundane and completely at odds with what had just happened. "I was terrified," she said quietly. "So was I." "Really? You looked calm, even when he had the gun pointed at me." "I was dying inside, but showing fear would have made it worse." He reached over, took her hand. His was steady now, the shaking gone. "I meant what I said to Kozlov about being motivated. I would have burned this entire city down to get you back." "That's terrifying." "I know, but it's true." They pulled up to the house. The front door was being repaired already, the broken glass swept up, the bullet holes being plastered over. Mrs. Chen was on the porch with a bandage on her head, directing workers with her usual brisk efficiency. She saw them and hurried over. "Thank God, I was so worried." "I'm fine," Alara said. "Are you okay?" "A concussion, nothing I haven't had before." She looked at Lucien. "Thomas is at the hospital. They say he'll recover fully." "Good. Make sure his family has whatever they need, full salary while he's out, plus a bonus." "Already arranged." Of course it was. This was their world. Violence and loyalty and money-fixing problems that normal people would never encounter. Inside, the house was slowly returning to order. Workers everywhere, replacing, repairing, erasing the evidence of what had happened. By tomorrow, it would look like nothing had occurred. But Alara would remember. Would remember the fear, the gunfire, the moment she thought she was about to die. "You need rest," Lucien said. "I need a shower. I feel like I can still feel their hands on me." "Then shower. I'll be in my office if you need anything." "Lucien." He stopped. "What happens now?" With Kozlov gone, with all his debts transferred to you, what changes? Everything. Nothing. I'll have to restructure some operations, deal with people who aren't happy about the power shift, handle the fallout from basically declaring war on a major player. He rubbed his face. But that's business. Standard complications. And us? What about us? You said you'd burn down the city to get me back. That's not... We've been married a month. We barely know each other. He studied her for a long moment. I've known you for 9 months, Ilara. Since that day in the bookstore. I've watched you, learned you, wanted you, and in the last month you've proven everything I believed about you was right. You're kind when you have every reason to be bitter. You're strong when most people would break. You push me to be better, even though it puts you in danger. He moved closer. So yeah, I'd burn it all down, without hesitation. That's insane. Probably. But it's how I feel. Ilara didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to process the fact that this man, this dangerous, complicated man, had just risked everything for her. I need that shower, she said. Take your time. She went upstairs. The bathroom was untouched, pristine. She turned the water as hot as it would go and stood under it until her skin turned red, washing away the feeling of those men's hands, the smell of gunpowder and fear. When she finally got out, she found clean clothes laid out on her bed. Mrs. Chen's doing. The woman was either psychic or just that good at her job. Ilara dressed and went to find Lucien. He was in his office, on the phone, speaking in rapid tones about territories and payments and restructuring. When he saw her in the doorway, he ended the call. Feel better? Marginally, can I ask you something? Always? Do you regret it, helping David Chen, knowing it led to this? Lucien leaned back in his chair. No. Because Kozlov was going to make a move eventually, and because that little boy has his father because I made a choice. That matters. Even though it almost got us both killed? Even then. He stood, moved around the desk. You changed me, Ilara. Made me remember that there are things worth fighting for besides power and reputation. People like David Chen and his son. People like you. I'm not some symbol of goodness. I'm just a person who asked you to help. You're not just anything. You're... He stopped, like he wasn't sure how to finish that sentence. I'm what? Important. To me. More than I expected. More than I was prepared for. Ilara's heart was doing complicated things in her chest. I'm scared. Of me? Of this. Of caring about you. Of what happens if I lose you. Or if you lose me. Then we'll be scared together. He pulled her close. But we'll be together. That's what matters. She let herself lean into him, let herself feel the solid warmth of him, the evidence that they'd both survived, that they were here, breathing, alive. What happens tomorrow? She asked. Tomorrow I finish consolidating power. I make sure everyone knows what happens when someone threatens what's mine. I restructure the entire operation to make sure this can't happen again. And after that? After that, I take my wife somewhere safe for a few days. Let the dust settle. Let her recover from the worst day of her life. Second worst, the day my father died was probably worse. Fair point. They stood like that for a while, holding each other in the office while the house was repaired around them, and the city adjusted to the new reality Lucien had created. Ilara thought about the girl she'd been a month ago. Scared, trapped, sold to pay debts that weren't hers. That girl wouldn't have recognized who she was now. Someone who'd been kidnapped and nearly killed and was standing in a crime lord's office feeling something that might be love. But that girl also wouldn't have asked Lucien to help David Chen, wouldn't have pushed him to be better, wouldn't have seen past the danger to the man underneath. Maybe they were both changing, both becoming something neither of them had planned. Maybe that was the point. I don't know how to do this, Ilara said into his shoulder. Do what? Be with you, love you, live in this world where violence is normal and people get shot for debts, and I could lose you any day. Then we'll figure it out together. One day at a time. That simple? That simple. It wasn't simple. Nothing about this was simple. But standing here, alive despite everything, Ilara thought maybe simple wasn't the goal. Maybe the goal was just survival and trust and choosing each other every day even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Okay, she said. Okay? Okay, we'll try. Together. Lucien pulled back to look at her. You're sure? No, but I'm sure I want to find out. He kissed her then. Not the careful kiss from their wedding, not gentle or measured. This was real, messy and desperate and full of everything they hadn't said yet. When they broke apart, Elara was breathless. Was that okay? Lucien asked. Yeah, that was okay. Outside, the sun climbed higher. The house slowly returned to normal. The city adjusted to its new reality. And inside, two people who'd been brought together by debt and circumstance and violence decided to become something more. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be safe. But it would be theirs. And for now, that was enough. They left the city 3 days later once Thomas was stable and the house was fully repaired and Lucien had finished whatever consolidation of power required 14-hour days and phone calls at all hours. Elara didn't ask where they were going. She packed what Mrs. Chen told her to pack. Casual clothes, warm layers, comfortable shoes, and got in the car when Lucien said it was time. They drove north for 4 hours, the city giving way to suburbs, suburbs to farmland, farmland to forest. The trees were just starting to turn, splashes of red and gold against the green. Fall coming early this year. Lucien had been quiet most of the drive, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the center console where Elara could reach it if she wanted. She did eventually, laced her fingers through his and felt him squeeze back. Where are we going? She asked finally. Somewhere I used to go when things got too loud, before I had the estate, before any of this. You're being deliberately vague. I'm being cautiously optimistic. You'll like it. They turned onto a dirt road that wound through thick forest. After another 20 minutes, a cabin appeared. Small, rustic, nothing like the mansion they'd left behind. You own this? Elara asked. Bought it 8 years ago. Come here maybe twice a year. No one knows about it except Marcus and Mrs. Chen. And now me. And now you. The cabin was simple inside. One main room with a kitchen and sitting area, a bedroom through a door to the left, a bathroom that looked recently updated, wooden floors, a stone fireplace, windows overlooking the forest. It was the most normal place Elara had seen in weeks. There's no cell service, Lucien said, setting their bags down, and the landline is only for emergencies. No internet, no connection to anything. So we're really alone. That was the idea. But if you're uncomfortable, I'm not. Elara moved to the window. The forest stretched out in every direction, endless and quiet. It's perfect. They settled in. Lucien built a fire even though it wasn't quite cold enough to need one. Elara unpacked their things, found the kitchen stocked with basics. Mrs. Chen's work again. That woman was either magic or had done this before. That first night they cooked together, pasta with vegetables, nothing fancy. They ate by the fire, and for the first time in days, Elara felt like she could breathe properly. How are you really? Lucien asked, with everything that happened. I don't know yet. I have nightmares. Wake up thinking I'm back in that factory with a gun pointed at me. She set down her fork. But then I remember you got me out. That we're here. That we're safe. And it gets a little easier. It'll take time. Speaking from experience? Unfortunately. He stared into the fire. I've been on both sides of violence. Done things I'm not proud of. Had things done to me that still wake me up some nights. You learn to live with it, but it never fully goes away. That's not comforting. I know, but it's honest. They cleaned up together, moved to the couch by the fire. Elara curled into his side, let herself feel the warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart under her ear. Can I ask you something? She said. Always. When did you know that you wanted me? Not just noticed me, but actually wanted me in your life. Lucien was quiet for a moment. There was a day, about 6 months ago. I went back to the bookstore. You were helping an elderly woman find a book she'd read as a child, but couldn't remember the title. You spent an hour with her, asking questions, pulling books, reading passages until you found it. And when you did, she started crying, happy tears. You gave her the book for free, told her it was a gift. Mrs. Patterson. I remember her. She'd just lost her husband. I know, I looked her up later, read about her story, and I thought about how you'd spent an hour of your life making a stranger's day better for no reason, except it was the right thing to do. That's when I knew I didn't just want you. I needed you. Needed that decency in my life before I forgot it existed. Elara lifted her head to look at him. That's a lot of pressure to put on a person. I know, I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm just saying I'm not some perfect symbol of goodness. I get angry. I make mistakes. I'm selfish sometimes. Good. Perfect is boring. And untrustworthy. Is that why you chose me? Because I'm real? I chose you because you reminded me that real things still exist, that not everything is a transaction or a power play or a calculated risk. He brushed hair back from her face. And because I couldn't stop thinking about you, which was inconvenient and distracting and completely worth it. Even now, after Kozlov and the attack and almost dying, especially now because we survived it together, because you didn't run when you had the chance, because you're still here. Alara kissed him, slow and deep, letting herself feel all the things she'd been too scared to acknowledge. The fear, the relief, the way her heart did complicated things when he looked at her like she mattered. They made love that night by the firelight, not the careful, measured restraint of their previous encounters. This was messy and desperate and real. All the fear and almost loss translated into skin and breath, and the simple fact of being alive together. Afterward, lying tangled in sheets they'd dragged from the bedroom, Alara traced the scar above Lucien's eyebrow. How'd you get this? Bar fight when I was 22. Someone thought I'd looked at his girlfriend wrong. Had you? Probably. I was an idiot at 22, as opposed to now. Now I'm a very calculated idiot. He caught her hand, pressed a kiss to her palm. Tell me about your mother. The real story, not the abbreviated version. So Alara did. Told him about her mother's laugh, how she'd sung while cooking, how she'd insisted on reading to Alara every night even when Alara got too old for it. Told him about the cancer, the rapid decline, the way her father had just stopped functioning after the funeral. He tried, she said, for a while, pretended everything was fine, but I could see him slipping. The gambling started small, just poker with friends. Then it was the casino, then it was loan sharks and debts he couldn't pay and lies about where the money went. You stayed anyway. He was my father, and I kept thinking if I just worked hard enough, earned enough, I could fix it, could save him from himself. She laughed, but it hurt. Turns out you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. No, but you can forgive yourself for trying. Can you? Because I'm still working on that part. Lucien pulled her closer. We're both works in progress. That's okay. They spent the next few days in a bubble of almost normalcy, hiking through the forest, cooking meals together, reading by the fire. Lucien taught her to chop wood, which she was terrible at, but enjoyed anyway. Alara introduced him to board games she'd found in a closet, and he turned out to be intensely competitive at Scrabble. That's not a word, she said, looking at his tiles. It is. Look it up. We don't have internet, remember? Then you'll have to trust me. Or I can call bullshit and make you forfeit. You wouldn't. Watch me. They argued about it for 20 minutes before Lucien finally admitted he'd made it up. Alara won by 40 points and made him do the dishes as penance. It was normal, domestic. Nothing like the life they'd been living in the city. Alara knew it couldn't last. Knew eventually they'd have to go back to the real world with all its complications and dangers. But for now, she let herself pretend this was their life. Just the two of them, and the forest, and no threats lurking in the shadows. On the fifth night, they were sitting on the porch watching the sunset when Lucien's expression changed. Went distant. What? Alara asked. I've been thinking about something, about what happens when we go back. What about it? You deserve a choice, a real one. Not the forced marriage, not the arrangement. You deserve to decide if this is what you want. Alara's heart stuttered. What are you saying? I'm saying I could arrange a divorce, quietly. You'd get a settlement, enough to live comfortably, go back to school, start over somewhere safe. You'd be free of the debt, free of me, free of all of this. You're offering to let me go. I'm offering you a choice, the one you never had before. Alara stood, moved to the porch railing. The forest was darkening, shadows deepening between the trees. Why now? Because I don't want you staying out of obligation, or fear, or because you think you don't have options. He came to stand beside her. I want you to stay because you want to, because you choose this. Choose me, not because you're trapped. And if I choose to leave? His jaw tightened. Then I'll let you go. Make sure you're safe. Make sure you have everything you need, and I'll live with it. Would you? Really? No, but I'd do it anyway. Because keeping you here against your will would destroy everything I... He stopped. Everything you what? everything I feel for you, everything I'm trying to build. You can't have something real if it's built on a cage, no matter how nice the bars are. Alara turned to face him fully. You're in love with me. Is that a question or a statement? Both. Lucian looked at her for a long moment. Yes, I'm in love with you. Have been for a while, which is inconvenient and terrifying and completely outside my control, but it's true. That's a terrible confession. You made it sound like a disease. It feels like one sometimes. This constant worry that you'll realize who I really am and run. This fear that I'll lose you to violence or circumstance or just your own good sense. He cupped her face. But it's also the best thing that's happened to me. You're the best thing that's happened to me. Alara's eyes burned. I'm not going anywhere. You should think about it. Really think about it. What it means to stay. The danger. The isolation. The fact that my world will always be violent and complicated. And I'm not going anywhere, she repeated. I choose you. This. All of it. Alara, I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying I'm not scared. But I'm saying I want to try. Want to build something real with you. Want to see who we become together. She took his hands. I love you too, which is probably stupid considering you literally bought me. I didn't buy you. I paid your father's debt. Semantics. The point is, this started as a transaction, but somewhere along the way it became something else. You became someone I trust, someone I care about, someone I can't imagine my life without. You barely know me. I know you read poetry and worry about dead girls and stopped taking contracts that felt wrong. I know you came for me when Kozlov took me. I know you're trying to be better than you were. That's enough. It shouldn't be, but it is. Lucian kissed her, deep and desperate, like he was trying to memorize the moment. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. If you change your mind, he started. I won't. But if you do, the offer stands, always. You want out? I'll let you go. No questions, no consequences. Okay? Okay? Okay, I believe you. Now, can we stop talking about me leaving and focus on the fact that we just confessed we love each other like a couple of awkward teenagers? He laughed. Actually laughed. The sound surprised out of him. Fair point. They went inside, made dinner, ate by the fire. Everything normal, except for the way Lucien kept looking at her, like he was cataloging every detail, storing it away. Later, in bed, Alara asked, What happens when we go back? I consolidate what I took from Kozlov, restructure the operation, make sure everyone knows the new rules. Which are? No debts that destroy families, no violence against people who can't defend themselves, no contracts that feel wrong. He pulled her closer. It'll be messy. I'll lose some people who don't like the changes, but I'll gain others who do. And us? We keep doing this, learning each other, building something real. You keep pushing me to be better. I keep making sure you're safe. Sounds unbalanced. It's not. You make me better. I keep you alive. Fair trade. If you say so. They left the cabin 2 days later. The drive back felt shorter somehow, the city appearing too quickly after their isolation. Alara watched it rise up through the windshield and felt something shift. This was home now. Not the city itself, but wherever Lucien was. Wherever they were together. The house looked the same as when they'd left. Perfect. Pristine. All evidence of violence erased. Mrs. Chen met them at the door with her usual efficiency. Welcome back, Mr. Moreau. You have 17 messages. Mrs. Moreau, your books arrived from the store. Books? Alara asked. Lucien looked slightly guilty. I might have called Robert and asked him to send some recommendations. You didn't have to do that. I know, but I wanted to. Sue me. Life fell back into a rhythm. But it was different now. Lucien worked from home more often. They had dinner together every night, sometimes just the two of them, sometimes with Marcus or other people from Lucien's operation. Alara learned names, faces, the complicated hierarchy of the world her husband operated in. She also started working again. Not at the bookstore. That part of her life was done. Instead, she started a consulting business, helping other small bookstores with inventory and customer service and staying competitive. It was work she could do from anywhere, and it made her feel useful, like she was building something of her own. 6 weeks after they returned from the cabin, Margaret called. I wanted to check in, the lawyer said. Make sure everything is, well, I'm not sure what I'm checking for, actually. I'm fine, Alara said. Better than fine. Really? Because when I facilitated this arrangement, I wasn't sure it would work out. You seem like very different people. We are, but different doesn't mean incompatible. I'm glad. Margaret sounded like she meant it. For what it's worth, your father would have been happy. That you're safe, that you're okay. Would he? He sold me to pay his debts. He made sure you'd be protected. That was the one thing he insisted on, that whoever took on the debt would guarantee your safety. Lucien was the only one who offered that. Alara thought about that after the call ended. Her father, in his final act, had tried to protect her. It didn't excuse the gambling or the lies or the mess he'd left behind. But maybe it meant something that he'd tried. That night at dinner, she told Lucien about the call. Did you promise my father you'd keep me safe? She asked. I did. Why? Because it was the right thing to say, and because I meant it. He set down his fork. I went to see your father before he died. Wanted to make sure he understood the arrangement. You never told me that. You never asked, and I wasn't sure you wanted to know. What did you say to him? I told him I'd take care of you, that you'd never want for anything, that I'd protect you from anyone who tried to use the debt against you. Lucien's voice was quiet. He cried. Asked me to make sure you didn't hate him. I told him I couldn't promise that, but I could promise you'd be safe. Did he say anything else? He said you were the best thing he'd ever done, that he'd ruined everything else, but you turned out perfect despite him. He was right about that. Alara's throat tightened. I'm not perfect. No, but you're good, despite everything he put you through. That takes strength. Or stubbornness. Same thing, really. 2 months after the attack, Anton came to the house. Alara was in the library when Mrs. Chen announced him, and she went downstairs to find him in the sitting room with Lucien. The tension between them was obvious. I came to apologize, Anton said when he saw Alara, for what I said, about you being a liability. I was a liability. Still am, probably. No, you're not. He looked at Lucien. You were right. I was wrong. The old ways, fear and violence and nothing else, they're not sustainable. You're building something different, something better. I didn't see it before. And you see it now? Lucien asked. I see that you're still alive, still in power, and that Kozlov's entire operation collapsed after you took it over because it was built on nothing but fear. That's not a coincidence. Anton stood. I'm with you. Whatever you need, the new way or the old way, whatever it takes. After he left, Alara turned to Lucien. Did that just happen? Apparently. He actually apologized, to me. He's learning, slowly, but he's learning. Because you're showing him there's another option. Because we're showing him. This doesn't work without you. Without what you push me to be. Alara kissed him. We're a team then. We're a team. 3 months after the wedding, Lucien came home with an envelope. Alara was reading by the fire when he found her. I have something for you, he said. Is it another 12 books I didn't ask for? No, though Robert did mention a new shipment coming in. Of course he did. You're his favorite customer. Lucien handed her the envelope. Open it. Inside was a deed to the bookstore. Second chapter books. In her name. Alara stared at it. What is this? Robert's retiring. He wanted to sell. I suggested he sell to you. I can't afford... Lucien, this is too much. It's not a gift, it's an investment. You run it however you want. Keep working your consulting business. Hire someone to manage the day-to-day. Whatever works. But it's yours. Your space. Your choice. Why? Because you loved that place. Because you deserve to have something that's entirely yours. And because I can't keep buying you books without a good excuse. Alara laughed, the sound breaking on something that might have been a sob. This is insane. This is me trying to give you a life that's more than just being married to me. You wanted choices? Here's one. She kissed him. Hard. Thank you. Does that mean you'll take it? Hell yes, I'll take it. They spent the next few weeks setting everything up. Alara hired Sarah to manage the store, brought in new inventory, updated the systems, kept everything that made second chapter special while modernizing what needed modernizing. The grand reopening was small, Just friends, really. Marcus came, which surprised Alara until she saw him gravitating toward the poetry section. Mrs. Chen brought homemade cookies. Even Anton showed up, looked uncomfortable for 10 minutes, then bought a first edition and left. Lucien stayed the whole time, watching Alara in her element, helping customers, recommending books, laughing with Sarah about inside jokes from when they'd worked together. "She's happy," Marcus said, appearing beside him. "She is. You did good, boss." "We'll see. Ask me again in a year." "I'm asking now. You did good." That night, lying in bed, Ilara turned to Lucien. "I never thought I'd be here, in this life, with you, running a bookstore and married to a crime lord and somehow making it work. Having second thoughts? No, just marveling at how weird life is. A few months ago, I was being sold to pay my father's debts. Now I'm here, happy, in love, building something real. Life's funny that way. Is it always going to be like this? The danger and the violence and the constant threat? Probably, in some form. My world doesn't stop being dangerous just because I want it to. But we'll handle it together. We'll handle it together." 6 months after the wedding, Lucien came to Alara with a proposal. "I want to get married again," he said. Alara looked up from the book she was pricing. "We're already married." "I know, but that was a transaction, a business arrangement. I want to do it again, for real this time, with choice, with meaning. You want a second wedding. I want to marry you when you actually want to marry me, when it means something more than settling a debt." Alara set down the book. "Are you proposing?" "I'm suggesting. There's a difference." "Not much of one." She moved closer. "But yes." "Yes?" "Yes. Let's get married again, for real this time." The ceremony was nothing like the first one. No strangers in expensive suits, no cold chapel with locked doors, just them and the people who mattered. They did it at the house. In the gardens, Alara had slowly been making less perfect and more lived in. Mrs. Chen officiated. Turned out she was internet ordained, which explained a lot about her. Marcus stood as Lucien's best man. Sarah was Alara's maid of honor. There were maybe 15 people total, small, intimate, real. Alara wore a dress she'd actually chosen. Simple. Blue. Nothing like the wedding gown that had been thrust upon her months ago. Lucien wore a suit, but he ditched the tie halfway through getting ready. Said it felt too formal. When Mrs. Chen asked if they had vows, they looked at each other and smiled. "I didn't prepare anything," Lucien said, which is probably a mistake. "Wing it," Alara suggested. "Okay, winging it." He took her hands. 6 months ago, I made promises I didn't mean. Said words that were just words. Today, I'm saying them again, and I mean every single one. I promise to keep you safe. To be honest, even when it's hard, to let you push me to be better, to build a life with you that's real and messy and worth it. Alara's turn. I promise to stay, to choose you every day, even when it's scary, to remind you that there are things worth fighting for besides power, to love you despite your terrible Scrabble cheating and your habit of buying me books I didn't ask for. She squeezed his hands. To be your partner in everything. That was beautiful, Mrs. Chen said. Now kiss before I start crying and ruin my makeup. They kissed. Everyone cheered. Someone popped champagne. It was perfect in its imperfection. Later, dancing in the garden as the sun set, Lucien whispered, "No regrets? Not even one. Not even when I cut off someone's fingers for threatening the wrong person? Okay, maybe a few questions about that, but no regrets?" He laughed, spun her, pulled her close. Life wasn't perfect. Lucien's work was still dangerous. There were still threats, still complications, still moments when Alara wondered if she'd made the right choice. But there were also mornings waking up next to him. There were quiet evenings in the library. There were dinners with Mrs. Chen's cooking and Marcus's terrible jokes, and the slow building of something that felt like family. There was the bookstore, her space, her choice, her contribution to the world that wasn't connected to Lucien's violence or power. There was love, messy and complicated and hard-won, but real. A year after the first wedding, Alara sat in the library with her laptop, working on an order for the bookstore. Lucien was in his office, handling business she didn't ask about, and he didn't volunteer. Her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Is this Alara Moreau?" "Speaking." This is David Chen. We met, you probably don't remember, but I remember. You and your son. How are you? We're good, really good. We moved to Oregon. I got a job. Michael's in school. We're safe. His voice cracked slightly. I wanted to call and say thank you for what you and your husband did. You saved our lives. You're welcome. I'm glad you're doing well. Michael wanted me to tell you something. He said to say you're a real-life superhero. He's 7, so that's the highest compliment he's got. Alara laughed. Tell him thank you. That means a lot. After the call ended, she sat looking at her phone, thinking about choices and consequences and the way one decision could ripple out in ways you'd never expect. She'd asked Lucien to help David Chen. That decision had nearly gotten them both killed, but it had also led to Kozlov's fall, to Lucien restructuring his entire operation around different principles, to this phone call, hearing that a little boy was safe and happy in Oregon. Nothing was ever simple, but maybe that was okay. Maybe the goal wasn't perfection. Maybe it was just trying to do the right thing and dealing with whatever came after. Lucien appeared in the doorway. Who called? David Chen. He and Michael are doing well. Good. I'm glad. Are you? Really? Yeah, I am. He moved into the room, sat beside her. I used to think the goal was control, having power over every situation, every person, every outcome, but that's not sustainable, and it's not real. What's the goal now? Building something worth protecting, with you, however messy that gets. It's going to get messy. I'm counting on it. Alara leaned into him. Outside, the sun was setting over the gardens. Inside, the house was quiet except for Mrs. Chen somewhere preparing dinner. This was her life now. Complicated and dangerous and nothing like she'd planned, but it was hers, chosen, real, and that made all the difference. Sometimes love wasn't finding the perfect person. Sometimes it was finding the right person at the worst time and deciding to make it work anyway. It was being sold to pay a debt and discovering that cages could have doors if you were brave enough to ask for the key. It was watching someone choose to be better and choosing to believe they could. It was messy and imperfect and occasionally terrifying. But it was theirs, and in the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.